mode. And I'm admitting. All right, it is 12:02. So let's go ahead and start with our first meeting of the year. Yes, I'm so excited. All of you are here. And what a way to kick off this meeting this year, actually, with Catherine here, with who I am going to introduce pretty quickly, pretty soon. But first, I would like to wish everyone a happy 2025. I'm more than happy, a successful one for whatever you have set your intentions for this year. You know, we focus on them. If we give all we have to them, we are able to accomplish them. So my positive energy to everybody here, my support, and obviously we will continue having our coach Launchpad sessions every month. As a reminder, it's on the second Monday of each month, always at 12 Central Time for 1 hour, and we have a speaker each time who we can learn from, who we can ask questions about a specific topic. I'm always trying to find different topics for our coaching business. And today is one that we haven't really talked too much about, which is sales. But before we jump into the main topic, couple of reminders. Please make sure that you send me, I added my phone number right next to my name. If you have not joined our Coaches Launchpad WhatsApp group where we put announcements, we share some resources, make sure you send me a WhatsApp invitation so I can add you to that group. And second is actually Tatiana, who would like to share a message with you guys from the board. Tati?
Yes, thank you, Elena. Hey guys, now I'm a membership director of our ICF chapter, and I have two messages for you. First, I want you all unmute yourself and go on a camera and celebrate with me our beautiful Elena. Just think about that. 18 months in a row without any 1 month missing, she was facilitating this amazing program, enriching all of us. Can we all unmute and do like, thank you, Elena! Yay!
Thank
you! More energy. What's that? See
Congratulations.
that? 18 months, guys. The level of commitment and dedication for all of us. Elena, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tati. That's very sweet. Thank you.
And a very short message from the board to you. This year, we are committed to make our coaching community visible. And you, as a part of coaching community, should be visible too. I'm inviting all of you to revisit your coaching profile on our website. I'll share a link in a chat with you with short instruction how to do that. Because we want people, not only in Houston, probably everywhere. The moment they think, oh, I need a coach, they don't go to Instagram, they don't go to Facebook, they go straight to ICF certified coach, right? So it's crucially important. Your information is up to date, your specialty is up to date, and your pretty picture is there. I'll put a link there in a chat how to do that. Anytime you need help, reach out to me. And thank you. This is it I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Tati. Great reminders. And thank you, everyone. It's such a pleasure to lead these calls every month because I learn a lot as well. And just having this community of coaches that in the same journey as I am, it's super, rewarding. So all right, without further ado, let's introduce Catherine Brown, who actually was a suggestion by one of our coaches. They suggested Catherine to join us and talk about her expertise. So Catherine, I will let you introduce yourself and the topic.
Thank you so much. I'm going to use screen sharing part of the time. And one of the things you'll see about my teaching style is that I really like to I like to teach a little and then pause, open it up and discuss. Teach a little, pause, open it and discuss. So if you want to wait till the end for questions, I have time for that as well. If you prefer to put it in the chat, Elena can help me watch the chat and we can answer as we go, but you'll know what to do, okay? Because I want this to be very interactive. I call it being workshoppy. So if you like that expression, you can use that. You can be workshoppy. And so just a brief introduction. I am probably one of the world's biggest fans of executive coaching that is from a person who's not a coach. I do get into a little bit of sales coaching, but that really is in the sales coach world, that's really more about mentoring. It's really not the way ICF defines coaching. And that's okay with me. Like my superpower is in gathering people. I'm going to talk with you toward the end of the presentation about an upcoming event I have. And I have had some kind of recruiting or business development role since I graduated university 3 decades ago. So I have had a lot of time to work with different types of companies. I've had different types of sales consultancies, and I took a lot of the lessons around that, and I wrote a book a few years ago called How Good Humans Sell. So the title of what I'll be covering with you today is How Good Humans Sell Themselves, because what I have observed in being an entrepreneur myself is that many coaches, I know it's not everyone's path, but many coaches start the business having come out of being an employee somewhere, sometimes big corporate, sometimes smaller. But being a coach is often not someone's first job. So unless a person has come from a business development background where it was a significant part of what you do with your day, not only do you have to learn the coaching competencies, and I know how high the bar is for ICF because I'm familiar with the levels, and I like to attend the Texas Coaches Coalition when they allow me to come to the conference. I have spoken there and I have just been an attendee, and so I'm pretty familiar with the levels and the language and the requirements. And it's a lot of work to be an ICF coach and to move through the levels of certification. But then if you're also becoming your own boss and you're building a company around it, then you have to learn to sell too. And this part really gets people tangled up. So my goal for today is to share what I have learned, that some of it's documented in my book, How Good Humans Sell, and some of it is new here that I just created for you based on my experiences in my conversation with Elena. So I hope you'll find it valuable. And I'm going to teach a little bit and then I'll invite you to comment. Okay, so I'm setting my timer so I stay on track and we have lots of time for Q&A. Okay, so setting the stage. When I decided to take all the things I'd learned about my experiences of running different types of sales consultancies, and I decided to write a sales training book. This was my COVID project. Okay, everyone's locked down. I'm home. I'm thinking this is kind of a bucket list project. I've been wanting to do it. I'm going to do it now. And I'm married to a researcher. He does leader development at Rice. And so I had the benefit of in-house counsel to create a really good survey that wouldn't bias people. Because you can have bad surveys, you can have good surveys. And Ryan, my husband, helped me write a good survey, which I sent out to business owners who do their own selling, as well as full-time sales professionals who sell for other companies. Okay, so I want you to understand 2 personas. Some are like you, where you have to sell your own products and services, and some were, say, a software salesperson who represents a big brand, or someone who sells accounting services, but they're the full-time business developer for that firm. I interviewed both people, then I segmented and studied the data. And so one of the first questions we asked is we said, just when you see the term sales or salesman, let us know what you think of. And this was an open field. And so you probably know how a word cloud works, but this is what they said. They said, overwhelmingly, knee-jerk reaction, what I think about sales are the biggest words Biggest words mean they're said the most often, right? Biggest words were a salesperson doesn't listen, which is the opposite of coaching, right? That would be terrible, right? They have to be an extrovert. They're pushy. They're sleazy. See how high used cars is on that? Those poor car salespeople, like, they're not all that way, but some are, right? So you see a few positive words, you see some neutral words, but overwhelmingly it's pretty negative. So I thought, that's interesting. Let's go to the next question. Well, the next question was actually a rating question. So I want to remind you, rating versus rank. Rating means on a scale of 1 to 7 or a scale of 1 to 10, 1 meaning low, 10 meaning high, tell me how you feel about this. Rank means I give you words that you put in a certain order, top to bottom. This was a rating question that looks like it was a ranking question. Okay, so we were asking on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being abhorrent, totally, unrespectable, and 10 being the most respected professions, how do you feel about these job titles? So this is surveying hundreds of people, okay? This is definitely a statistically significant sample. People think doctors are the most respectable, and they think sales professionals are the least, and these were the numbers. Okay, and remember, they got to look at each phrase independent without looking at one another, and it still turned out this way. Okay, now I've been around long enough that actually the fact that a business owner who has to sell their own services, that didn't surprise me that much, because I've seen behavior over and over again that says, look, I got into this to be coaching. I didn't get into this to have to be a salesperson. Or I got into this to be a graphic designer. I didn't get into this to have to sell marketing services, right? Whatever the business is, I totally get that. What was terrible and heartbreaking to me was that even the people who agreed to take the job as the sellers answered this way. Do you see how terrible that is? That tells you how pervasive negative feelings about selling are, because it means that someday when your business is big enough that you want to go hire people to sell for you, you have to find someone who isn't going to answer this way, right? Or coach them to help them answer differently, because even salespeople say this, which I just think is crazy, just crazy, right? So I'm going to offer an alternative definition for you that I'm going to let you ask me a few questions if you want before we keep going, because some of you might have more interest in that research or, some of the terms used, things like that. But this man, Ron Willingham, was the founder of a sales training system, which influenced me really heavily when I was growing up in business. He has since passed on, but he's got some great books, and I can share those resources with you. This is his definition of selling, which I continue to use. I actually quote it in the table of contents in my book because I think it's so lovely and it sets such a high bar as an alternative definition to what sales is. So he says selling is a process of identifying or, not always, right, or satisfying people's wants and needs. And then it's always got this second part. The best selling always has the second part. It says selling is also creating extra value for people above the price they pay for it. So it's just so generous and lovely. Notice you don't see words like coercion, convincing, manipulate, require, right? It doesn't have anything like that. It's saying sales is a process that I take people through to understand what they're trying to accomplish, identify those, and then see if there's a way to satisfy those. So part of why I'm so crazy about building and having people build referral networks is because the truth is that you can love the idea of working with someone, get on that sales appointment and find out, I am not the best person to help them based on what they're sharing. I can just tell. And you would have other people to send them to, because that is an example of extra value. Like, are you kidding? We got on this call and I thought I wanted to work with you, but you told me that you didn't think I was the best person to help you, and you sent me in a better direction. That's amazing, right? Like, that's the kind of seller that we want to be. And so I love this definition. I just think it's beautiful. And you never want to have the first part without the second part. So I thought that was really cool. Let me pause because I can't watch the chat and talk at the same time. So let me pause and ask if anyone's written a question, Elena, or do we want to see if people want to unmute and have a Q&A about anything I've shared so far before I dive into some selling skills for coaches?
No comments or questions on the chat. I don't know if anyone here has so far a question for Catherine.
Yes, I do. Hi, Catherine. This is Chris Matvich. I just joined the session, and I really value how you're reframing what selling means or is, and how you're priming my mind in that as well. A question on this quote, the second sentence says, "It's creating extra value in the process of engaging a client for the first or second time and being able to identify people's wants, needs, or desires." That's not necessarily the moment we are creating extra value, right? There's also a point of how do we signal the value that we might create together in partnership with the client. So it's almost a future promise, because as a coach, we inherently trust the process and the reflection that the client will be going through. And I think that's why the nuances between inviting the client for them to realize that themselves versus convincing a customer that it will definitely happen.
Thank you for that. So let me agree and disagree, if I might, and then feel free to come back to me. Okay. So I believe that when you're defining all the perceived value, and perceived not as in not true, but as in subjective, right?
Yep.
All the perceived value they will understand as they work with you for sure unfolds. And again, having paid a lot of money for coaching as a coachee, I see that. Like I've had my expectations far or the deliverables far exceed my expectations. And I came in with pretty high expectations. So there was tons of extra value there. I personally feel with the second half, the reason, even on a discovery call or fit call or whatever you call it, the reason I can provide extra value, even on that first call, is because I'm such a maniac learner that even on the first call and in the first call, I might drop a resource. I might make a connection. I might say, oh, I know we're here to talk about this. You did mention you had all these years experience with such and such. And if it's appropriate later, I sure would love to, to send you this person's LinkedIn profile so you can follow them. You see how those are just little examples? There's big ones too. But I actually do believe that at every single step from, let's say, the moment we connect on LinkedIn or the moment I'm introduced to them or the moment they respond to an email I send, till, well, forever. It never ends, right? Because they might come back to you. It's a virtuous relationship that, could be for the rest of their life in some form. That extra value starts and never stops. So let me let you respond to that. What do you think of that?
No, I agree, and I align with that. I think as I was talking to you, I realized, wait, we are creating value because we're noticing and connecting. I think how I'm taking away this quote is, and we're giving them a flavor of the value we can offer throughout the partnership that is below the price that they will have to pay to engage me in that partnership.
Yes. And when you think about it human to human, then you also, like, this weird thing happens because as soon as you're not worried about whether the deal's going to close, which this takes a lot of practice. I don't know where you are in your journey, but I mean, everyone feels worried in the beginning because you are trying to get your offer right. You're testing your pricing. There's all these things you're trying to get right. So you actually are worried inside, even if you're trying to act like you're not. But the amazing thing I can promise, because I've seen it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times now over my career, is that the more confident you become in the little value you can give because you get positive feedback in those calls, as well as the big picture value, the more that happens, the more relaxed you feel. And the more relaxed you feel, the more confidence they have in you because you don't seem scared, right? Because there's something that's happening even over Zoom where, like I've talked about this subject so much that as I got on the call with Elena, I was looking forward to it, but I was not nervous. And when I mean, even a couple of years ago, if I were presenting this to this group, many of whom I don't know, I would have felt a little bit sick to my stomach. Now I would have done it anyway, but I would have felt nervous, but I feel less nervous because of practice. So the amazing thing is practice just helps you come across better and better and better because you're coming with open hands and saying, oh, I hope that this future relationship in this form works. But you know what? We'll have a relationship no matter what. Because if I'm not the right person, I'm going to send you to someone else who is, and I'm going to give you these resources along the way. And you mean it. And then that just makes them go, oh, I really want to work with you. Now, I'm not saying that we're not saying that to trick them. I'm just saying it's what happens as people gain confidence, is they become more attractive because they seem like a guide.
Yes.
Catherine,
Yeah.
I think Chris always has this, he has a very curious mind. So I love his questions. I love your answers. A lot here have resonated with your answer. And if I may add that I heard somewhere that selling it has a rhythm to it. It's no, 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 yes. No, 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 yes. That if you don't get all those no's, it's part of the rhythm of it. So that's
Yes.
with me. Catherine, David asked, what was, back to your survey, what was the question for the survey? I don't think we captured the question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't list it. Let's see. So the first one around the word cloud was list the top three words that come to mind when you see this word. And then the word popped up. And then the second question was on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 meaning the least respectable and 10 being the most respectable, rate the level of respectability of each profession.
Got it. Perfect.
So what happened is sales was at 6 point something and doctors were at 8 point something. But what we found so fascinating was that we didn't say, here are all 10 professions, put them in the order. We tried to have an individual measure on each, and they still ended up this way.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. We'll have more time.
No more questions. Keep going.
Okay, great. So this little slide is probably like the least pretty. And actually, I hope one of the most helpful things I'll share with you today. As I really sat and thought about preparing, I thought about bringing in what I knew about sales, what I knew as a coaching buyer, my conversation with Elena, preparing me, all the different things. I thought, what would someone pretty early in their coaching career, what would I want them to know if I had to say, these are all the areas of competency that you will need to master over time? And to me, it's these 4 things. Now, I'm not saying there aren't others. These are kind of things that rise to the top to me. It's that you have to decide what your offers to the market are going to be. And, when you sell for someone else, they tell you what to sell. And you hopefully resonate with it and like it. But when you're creating, you're a creator too, right? When you're creating from scratch, you have to determine, am I going to have a niche? How do I want to be described? Do I have a certain type of persona? When that's a marketing term, right? The persona I want to work with. You have to come up with the offers. And it needs to be really clear to your buyer. And usually it's clearer to us than it is to them. And let me tell you, it's just how it is every time. Every time I've ever built anything, it's clear in my brain, not clear to others. You need lots of feedback, lots of practice, lots of conversations, and then you keep refining them. So if you're still sorting that, please don't feel bad. It's like, that's just the way of learning. I recently heard a podcast, and the founder of UGG, UGG, UGG Boots, was being interviewed, and he's now a very old man. And he talked about how one of the things he loves about working with entrepreneurs is he says, every business, it doesn't matter if it's coaching, it doesn't matter if it's a dentist's office, it doesn't matter if it's a new restaurant. Every business starts as a baby, starts as an infant, and then it has to go through all the developmental phases. And there's really not a way to skip those phases. You can go through them more quickly, but you can't skip, because you just can't reach maturity without going through that evolution. So clear offer is a real challenge when you first start. You also have to deeply believe in the value. So now we're going to get into the real heart of what holds people back in selling, because what happens, especially when someone comes out of an ICF training program that I've observed, is that you all understand that coaching changes lives. You have been given a great methodology. You can defend coaching and why it matters and why everyone needs a coach. And that is only part of the belief. The other part is like a deep held belief that you can deliver this. And that's the tricky part, right? Because we have to grow in our belief of our ability to do it. And that evolves as well. Then we bump up against the fact that most of us have a very unhelpful definition of selling. So whether you're 2 months in or 2 years in, you're like, crap, no one's going to do this for me. I have to figure this out. And that is frustrating, by the way, for any founder, not just coaches. I run a group of technical founders. I run a community for them in Houston. And these guys feel this way. They're systems engineers. They invented amazing software. And they're like, you mean I have to sell it too? I mean, it's just no one likes to do that. So this is a really big thing you have to work on. And then the last is that you can take all these different people's methods and you still have to sort out what is my, to use Elena's words, what is my rhythm and my process? And so you might decide at first, well, I'm going to do fit calls. And then you find out, well, something I'm doing on my fit calls, people are taking this free coaching from me, but they're not converting. Or I'm sending a proposal and no one's signing. Okay, this isn't working, right? Because they're not converting. So what is happening? And you have to keep tweaking your process. You got to do all of these. And they're always evolving all 4 of the categories. I'm going to build on this. So I'm going to pause and ask if people have clarifying questions, or do you think I've left off a major category, which is entirely possible? Questions or comments?
I think
Catherine, I would add
part of it is the understanding who your customer is, right? That's a big part of this whole cadence.
Yeah. And so it could sit inside clear offer, but it also could be a 5th thing. I totally agree. And then we all go through the panic. If you haven't, you're very fortunate because most of us do. You go through the panic where you think, if I lead with this niche, if I say, for example, I have a friend, I don't think she's on the call. I have a friend who is a coach who has a very large percent of her business among people who were trained as medical professionals who now do something else. Okay, so lots of former doctors, lots of former dentists in her practice. And so if I lead with that, will someone who is not a former doctor want to work with me? And there's all the fear around niching, right? So like, that's so normal. It's so normal to struggle with that. Anything else? I think someone else was trying to speak too.
yeah, I've been a salesperson for a long time too. Mr. Ring's chair, I can vouch for what she's saying, but I would add, have to your process, like follow up. One email to someone doesn't do it. Like there's some research out there. The one I hear is always like takes 5 to 7 times a follow up to get someone to convert. So like, just be organized, make sure you're following up with people multiple times, because sometimes it just takes like reiterating it to them in a little bit different way multiple times before they'll convert. Like the no, yes thing, that's part of it.
Yes. And I thank you for that. And I would add to that, you know, Elena, the no, yes is only improved as you become clearer in all of these things and you develop really awesome marketing. And when I say really awesome marketing, I actually believe you can be extremely successful just picking a channel. Am I going to have a well thought through email list? Am I going to make YouTube videos? Am I going to have a Facebook group? Am I going to show up and answer people's questions and basically give free free advice related to leader development, confidence, and coaching on LinkedIn? Whatever the channels are for outreach, there's just many that can make you successful. But it's actually only as your brand grows and people recognize you, that then you go from no, yes to maybe, yes. Or maybe just 2 maybes, maybe, yes. And I'm saying that from personal experience, because the more you're known for something, the more likely those referrals come in. The referrals are much more probable to convert quickly. And then things start to kind of pick up speed in business development.
Love that, maybe in that rhythm. Jerry has a question, Catherine. Jerry?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, no, I mean, I was just going to add a comment on the deep belief in the value. I think a lot of people, I know I struggle with the idea of quantifying the number, because it's like, well, you know, how do I factor in all the hours and money that I put into my own personal career journey, along with any certifications, along with, you know, my credibility? How does all that factor into the number that I do? Because that feels so subjective. And so when people are just like, well, this is what I want to charge, and then they, try to find a way to like fill that in as opposed to like list everything out and then, say, okay, well, based on this is what I'm looking for. So I know that's, it's one thing to have a deep belief in the value, but it helps when, when people are just like, well, this is what's built into the cost, right? So, yeah.
And Jerry, on top of that, thank you so much for saying that, because you're reminding me that even as I'm talking, I have like assumptions about words I didn't give. I think you just named an example of the exercise you would go through to start to build up and understand your own belief in the value you bring based on your experiences. And the whole other side is you begin to believe the value of what you're offering as you have social proof that it's changing people.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's both. And the thing is, again, only through practice and testimonials do you get to where you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I'll give you an example. Quick preview to the end. I'm doing an entrepreneur professional networking conference at the end of February in Galveston. So I'm going to tell you about that because there's a special thing for coaches there. But the early bird is gone. Okay, I've been selling tickets for this thing for months. And right now, for all day Thursday and half day Friday, including most of your meals, right now it's $598 to go to the conference. And I know by surveying different entrepreneur conferences, this is a very reasonable price. I also know that people who go sell new business, and especially people who get, the more involved they get, the more they close new clients. So I could sit here and tell you all day long about the hundreds, tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars of business that has happened through these events. I won't bore you with that. It's not my goal in this slide to sell you on that, but it's to say that because I have that experience, when I have someone say $598, that feels expensive, then I have a little bit of that flip in your stomach, like, oh God, I want everyone to like me, and I feel a little hesitation too. And then I go, you know what? And I think of the people's names, I won't name them here, but I think of real clients, real members, real guests. And I think of the connections have been made. And I thought, what is $598 compared to $70,000? What is $598 compared to 3 new members in your 90-day program at $10K a piece? Right? What is $598? Because I'm thinking of real people. Okay. But the first time I did it, Jerry, I didn't have any of that. So I was waking up in the middle of the night with total terror, like, oh God, I hope this works. Because it was an experiment. But now I have social proof. So that builds my confidence in the value. So that's an evolution, it's an evolution.
Can I
Okay.
add a comment also, Alina?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I've been recently doing some business development work for a client, and one of the key trends, of course, as most of you know, is ROI in coaching. And I just wanted to share this. Often many of us use our testimonials to prove that value that we believe in or help others see the value of our work. But maybe, a switch could be doing the testimonials in a way that your clients express their ROI. What are they getting in return for the investment of their time, energy, and of course their money? And using that to sort of, really prove the value of what you do, I think can be really powerful.
And I really want to build on that again, having been a coachee, like you might think, oh, that's a good idea, but now I feel scared to ask. You really have to ask because you never know what they're going to say. And I will tell you that, so I did a 90-day coaching program with a coach that I followed for 18 months without him knowing. 18 months. So just think about all the people who lurk and follow and you don't even know they're following you, right? They might not like your post or comment, but they're just following your brand, following what you're doing. I booked a discovery call, basically was just checking prices, decided to work with him, booked the minimum amount of time I had to commit to. During the time I was engaged, I had quite a bit of homework was assigned based on my goals and what I brought to what I wanted to have done. So I had homework and interactions and we went back and forth because he gave me some things to journal about. And it was during that session that during that 90-day window that I had a dream, and I dreamed about combining peer advisory and mastermind groups with professional networking. And that is how I came up with what is now known as the Good Humans Growth Network, my community. I had a dream about it. And I often will dream and wake up in the morning. If I can remember what was going through my head, I'll scratch it out, write it down, and I'll have some good ideas, because I think, just early in the morning, your brain is in a different state, right? That's well researched biologically. And sometimes you're just sort of closer to accessing your subconscious. And so I woke up and I thought, gosh, I wonder if I could create something that would be different. And I just started exploring that idea. And I completely credit that back to the work I was doing with him. Because what happened is, because I was addressing limiting beliefs and fears, and I was working through steps, it was a next logical outcome that I would think about, well, what's next? And I couldn't do it by myself. I already tried. So a coach helped me with that. So think about what kind of testimony that is for him. I mean, there's an entire ecosystem that's going to be around the world that came out of someone's brain because they were working on the things that coaches help them work on. I mean, it's a really powerful testimony, and yours will have that too. Your clients have that too, but you have to ask. So I love that point. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so I love this part because now we're moving into what you know how to do to help yourself be a better seller as a coach. Okay. Dr. Susan Day at Harvard Medical School, she says, our emotions are data. They are not our directors. Okay. You know this as a coach. And so especially the part about how we all have a view of selling, and we have to ask ourselves, is that helping me? So I'm bringing about this notion that you know all about because you help your clients do this. And that is the power of a reframe. Okay, you can't change something if you don't recognize first what the problem is. So first thing to do is to have an awareness and accept the fact that you define a word a certain way, and that the definition and the meaning you're giving that word is giving it power. And that you also have the power to reframe and to change that. So we need a perspective change when it comes to selling, because many of us have been abused as buyers, and we think, oh, well, I don't want to be like that person. So we start defining ourselves by like what we don't want to be instead of what we do want to be. And as you know, that doesn't work in coaching, right? You need a clear vision of where you're trying to go. So here are a few questions, for you to think through, right? What are you making sales mean right now? Another is, what is useful about the way that you define selling? Now, you might have some things that are useful. You just want to inventory those. And then ask yourself, what would be a more helpful framework? So you get a chance to write that out. Well, if I believe selling what meant this, then right? And like think through that. That could be a cool, fun peer activity, with you, with each other. And what can I decide today to believe is true? And so I think that we've all seen it in our clients. And now I want to ask you and invite you to think about this for yourself today. You can have a very quick transformation. Once you have this realization that something is costing you a lot, you can have a reframe moment where like, that's it. That's the end of that. I'm not going to worry about that anymore. I'm going to give you mine. I have a couple of recurring unhelpful limiting beliefs that come from my story of origin. I've done a ton of work, both with a coach and with a therapist. I know where they come from. And when they pop up, I know they're popping up. They're trying to keep me from doing big, brave things. So I have named this voice inside my head that pops up occasionally. I have named her Chatty Cathy because I don't go by Kathy, I go by Catherine. So Chatty Cathy is trying to keep me safe. Chatty Cathy is trying to preserve the status quo because Chatty Cathy knows how to live in this world that way. And Chatty Cathy doesn't want me to take big risks because that feels like that's unsafe. So instead of feeling bad or feeling ashamed, what I now do is I pretend like she's on my shoulder, and I just have little moments where I say, oh, there you are. Thank you so much. I know you're trying to keep me safe, right? You're trying to keep me safe, right? No shame, no blame. Just recognize you're trying to keep me safe. You know what? High achievers often feel nervous, right? This is normal for high achievers. And I reframe how I want to be. Okay. Now, I just told you it took me thousands of dollars to figure out. So please take that and use it if it helps you, right? But like you just saw me explain the shortcut version of how I reframe when I feel like I'm about to do something that I want to throw up, or I wake up at 4 in the morning and I think no one's going to sign up for my conference and I feel scared. Okay. I have people signed up. So the good news is that's already untrue. But whatever the goal is, it doesn't matter because there's always a higher goal. So it's normal to feel that way. And so I want to ask you to take responsibility for what you're making wrong about sales, and then say, I have all the skills I need, especially as a coach, to reframe this in a positive way. So one of the ways you can do that is by really tapping into your values, because even though you learn a selling framework, you got to sell in a way that feels like a good human way to you. So remember that your values are sort of unconscious. They're deep down in their program. They're also consciously expressed. And then also we have values that are tied to our identity. So we have the where am I today? And we also have the where am I going? So I'm really calling into my future identity when I say, Chatty Cathy, oh, I know you're trying to keep me safe. It's actually normal for high achievers to feel nervous. So I'm going to go ahead and do this anyway because I am safe. I'm moving toward who I want to be, right? So I'm noticing where I am. I'm noticing what identity I want to move toward. And I sell in a way that is consistent with my values. So for example, the reason I think it was Chris who asked the question earlier about extra value, even in discovery process, being generous is a very high value of mine. So I like to give away lots of free resources, refer podcasts, tag people, share stuff. It makes me feel good as a person, and it makes me feel like I sow so many seeds of goodwill that when I ask for something that's a fair price, I feel very confident because I'm like, you know what? I've been generous all along the way. And if this is right for this person at this time, they'll take it. So I'm always trying to act in a way that's consistent with those values, and your value list might be different, right? There's other good values too. But that helps me to think about that. You can frame selling in a way that aligns with your values, and then you start acting in a way while you're selling that does embody these. And that it's real cool to see how people do that different, and how it ends up like that application manifests into different styles of selling, which is kind of cool to see as well. Okay, so I'm going to pause because I've covered a lot, especially about the reframing, those open questions, and yeah, just going to be quiet and see if we have questions in the chat or if anybody has a question or comment.
Catherine, David asked, how do you measure success? Oh, David, I just saw your hand up. Sorry. You would ask.
I'll reframe that. That was from a previous thing. I thought Ryan would really appreciate that question.
Oh, yeah. Well, David, what's fun? I'm actually going to cover this at our conference, but my husband, who David knows, has developed a tool as a side gig that helps people come up with their purpose statement, and then how the purpose statement expands into all domains of their life. So it even gets into recreation in addition to your vocation and things. And so it is subjective, right? Like, I know you know that, but even though it's subjective, many people don't know their purpose. So it's fun to be having these conversations around the dinner table and think, how do we help a person decide what that success would mean for them? And they would never say they have success if they were apart from their purpose. So figuring that out as a precursor is important. So we're having a good time with that.
I love that. Actually, what I was going to comment on is you were talking about reframing. And one of the things we're very aware of is, as coaches, is assumptions. And what I found myself doing is when I'm about to make the call or make the connection, I'm making assumptions about how that person's going to react to me. So anything you have for us to help us with that would be appreciated.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I think you just did a great job actually speaking to it. I think it is about slowing down and paying attention. So this is maybe, okay, I feel like you've invited this, so I'm going to just go there because there's probably different opinions about this. I really like, there's a book called How Emotions Are Made. And I actually ascribe to the school of thought that says that emotions are the words that are assigned to the way people feel, that they're not actually universal, because there's fairly decent evidence that across cultures, face expressions and different ways people describe things have different language for them. So I think actually what you're paying attention to is you want to pay attention to how your body feels, because you start to learn, oh, like when I get ready to go on a stage and I'm very excited, which I'm saying instead of nervous, that I really often the spit in my mouth dries up a little bit. And so I've come to, sure, that's great, Elena, thanks. I've come to learn that when I'm getting ready to go on, I have a little bit of butterflies on my stomach, but literally like the saliva dries up, which makes it really hard to talk on a stage. And so I've noticed that, and now I can catch it a little bit earlier. David, and I do a lot of public speaking, so I don't know if this is your particular challenge. Maybe it's just mine. But if I can catch it a bit earlier, I can start to rehearse the beliefs and the things I say to myself so that I don't spin further into that. But it's actually the trigger of dry mouth that tells me that I'm feeling a certain way, and then I have to name how that is. Okay, so are you tracking with me? So I try to use words that are more helpful. And what I really love that you said about assumptions is that this is my belief is that I think as humans, we cannot help but make up a story. We have to interpret everything around us at any given moment. And given that's the case, since you don't have data that says the person doesn't want to talk to you, how about you make up a story that helps you, which would be something more like, gosh, I bet they're doing their best and they must be so busy. I bet they would be glad to talk to me if they can make time for this. I wonder what's going on in their life that is really competing for their attention. When the flu is going around, you could say, oh, I hope it didn't hit their household. Whatever it is, because you're already making up a story. You don't know why they haven't gotten back to you. So make up a story that's helpful, gracious, serving and believing the best. And I will even sometimes, if I've marketed to someone for a long time, and I mean, I am convinced I can help them, I will say to myself, if I can just spend some time with them, I know they'll come to understand that this would help them. Now, I'm still going to be very open-handed if I ever get the opportunity for a sales call. I'm not going to be coercive, but to get myself to persist in my outreach, I've got to do that kind of self-coaching that's very positive, believing the best, because we kind of have to make up a story anyway. We don't know why they're not getting back to us. What else? Thoughts or questions? Okay.
No.
Elena says she's going to take a call later. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, I used to say, don't make up a story. When I would do sales coaching, I would say, don't make up a story. You don't know what's happening. And I thought, well, that's not helpful. We all make up a story. So now I've said, let's make up a story that helps us. What helps me persist? What helps me believe the best? The worst is when you're mad at someone and they don't even know it because you're just mad because you keep trying and you feel sad and discouraged, but you actually have no information about what's going on in their life. I opened my book, How Good Humans Sell, with the story of how I was close to closing a proposal. I'd actually already done sales calls with all the decision makers, and I was close to closing a proposal and setting the training date with a guy who then fell off the map. And I believe he was an early case of COVID, because the times and the dates work out and we hardly knew about it then. But he just took to the bed and he said, I just can't believe how sick I was. And he was down for over a week and he wasn't even doing his email and he didn't even turn on his out of office. And I mean, I was working so hard to coach myself through that process and not make him wrong, because I thought I had this thing in the bag. Like, I was scared, disappointed, self-doubting. I thought, did it not go as well as you thought? What's wrong with you, Catherine? I mean, there were just all these, perseverating that was trying to have happen. And at the same time, I'm trying to coach myself and say, you don't know, you don't know. Keep going, keep going, keep going. One thing I love from the world of therapy that really helps me in sales is to decide that other people can set their own boundaries, right? But you can't set a boundary on another person, as you know. You can only decide for yourself. So I feel like the example of how that applies to sales is to say, I'm gonna keep asking in different forms. I'm gonna market to them. I'm gonna reach out. I'm gonna stay in a regular rhythm to show how I can help. But I am going to let them be a full, whole, healthy, complete person who can set their own boundary. And I'm going to let them tell me no if they want. Short of that, I'm going to keep going because I'm not going to decide for them. And when I said it as a boundary thing, I go, oh, I don't want to be a person that's trying to throw everyone else's boundaries around on them. I just want to manage myself. So managing myself means I keep going and I let them manage themselves. So I hope that's helpful. That really helped me. I brought that piece from therapy into my self-coaching. That really helped me.
Catherine, I have a question, and it's around because we can, from listening to you and from learning in this journey, we understand, I think, that selling is the big thing about selling is mindset, right? It's really so much what we think, the thoughts that we allow, that how we the inner chatter that we have. But there's also the part of the scripting I've heard, right? Is how you write your invitation. What is that you say, the words that you use, the tone that, so what would you say, first of all, what's the ratio in effective selling? And what would you say about the scripting?
Yeah. Great question. I actually think that selling coaching is very challenging. I mean, I don't say that to everyone I talk to. Like, I've had a lot of coaches in my community, and I think one of the things that's so challenging about coaching is that until you know someone who's done it or you've been through it, it is difficult for people to understand what the value would be, because they just don't understand how much richer their life will be for it. And so I loved the earlier examples that somebody gave about, that's why the client testimonies are so meaningful. So you can try to quantify where you can about what the benefits are to people. In general, Elena, I'm going to say that when you're new to any kind of business, into selling anything, people tend to start the first sentence with I or we, and like that noun is the wrong subject of the sentence, right? Anything you write on social, anything in an email, anything is going to be about, if you're going to say I, you want to say, I often find that, and you're going to go into making the subject of the sentence be about the ideal person you want to serve. So be very careful. We use an analogy of the guide and the hero of the story, right? Your client is the hero of their own story. And in the opening 2 minutes of any movie, right, you see that the hero's got some challenges and they're on some kind of a quest, and they got to figure out why they have a scar on their forehead or whatever the thing is they have to figure out, right? And you're going to be the guide in that process, but you got to make sure that the ratio of opportunity for their improvement or problems that are common for people to experience, you want to talk about that like 60 to 70% of the time, and talk about yourself the remainder. And what happens when you first start out, you flip it because you're so anxious to show how you can help and you just don't know better. But the more confidence you get, the more you'll see. I really want to invite you to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm going to put this here one more time. It was way up in the chat, but we added some people since then. Okay, please connect with me and like follow the way I do my posts, because I try very hard. I'm going to say 80% of the time or more, the first sentence that I write is actually about the reader. And that's very deliberate because that's the hook. The marketing hook is to try to get them to keep reading. And so you want to practice talking about the person whose attention you want before you talk about your own credentials. So I want to encourage you to try that.
Thank you, Catherine. We are 5 minutes till 1, so I know you have to.
Thank you. I do have a 1 o'clock. Thank you for telling me. I'm going to tell you all something I want to invite you to, and why it's kind of cool for coaches. Let me write okay, this is the link in the chat. It's the link to the networking conference that I have at the end of February. And so there are a few things I want to suggest that you do. Number one, my book on Amazon is $15. It's called How Good Humans Sell. It literally has scripts and templates that you can follow so that you make sure you talk about the problem or opportunity for your buyer before you talk about yourself. And so there's some real practical tools that are inside of it and downloadable resources. Please get it. That's why I wrote it, is to have good B2B sales training be available for the world. So please get that if you don't have it already. The other thing I've mentioned a couple times now is referrals. Okay. And so I am having this event at the end of February at the San Luis in Galveston. I hold 2 conferences a year. And I saw Angie was on the call earlier. I don't know if she's still here, but Angie came to the one in the fall. So she could be a resource for you to tell you all what it was like. But this is for business owners who want to meet other business owners who will learn what they do so they can introduce them to their clients. Okay, the whole point is to meet other people who sell complex products and services. There's no one from retail here. There's no one who sells online only. These are things that go to C-level executives. So other people who sell to vice president of HR, founders of companies, CIOs, directors of IT, organizational development executives. That's who everyone sells to. Okay. And so we're all going to be in the same room. And my call to action from this call is to invite you to consider coming, because one of the breakout sessions I'm going to do is every coach that is in attendance who is interested is going to be in a room and have a breakout session where they are able to do coaching with people who sign up to receive a 30-minute coaching session. So there's going to be pop-up coaching as one of the breakouts. And the reason that's a big deal for you is because there's going to be a couple hundred people there. And I am literally and metaphorically standing up in front as the leader and saying, everybody needs a coach. If you don't have a coach, there's coaches here. You want to meet them. I want you to connect. And doing those 2 free sessions in the breakout, some of those people might convert. And even if they run out of time or they don't get to you, they might say, would you have a call with me another time? Can we go get a cup of coffee and talk about this? Like, it is a selling opportunity for you to be in the room. And so you don't have to agree to do that if you attend, but all of those coaches that sign up will be asked if they would like to do that. And it's me giving you an opportunity to get in front of a potential buyer because someone is coming to the breakout session saying, I'd like to see what coaching is like. So you could have some warm leads in the room. Questions about that? And you can contact me through LinkedIn to learn more.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you would attend, you would come and attend. I've already told you the price. It's $598 for Thursday and Friday. This is if you use the code GROW100, that gets you $100 off. You can drive down, you can drive back and forth. You can spend one night. I have a great room block that's not very expensive. So I'm inviting you to participate and be a part of my network, because I hope that what I've communicated today is that I love coaching. I believe it changes people's lives. I love all my members and guests to have a chance to meet a coach that's a good match for them. So if I can help facilitate that process, I sure want to. So please let me know if you would consider coming.
Thank you,
Okay, well, I
Catherine.
think I've given you my LinkedIn and people know how to reach me. I'm sorry we're out of time, Elena. I had so much fun. Thank you.
No, thank you. We want to thank you so much for the time you've given us. We've learned a lot, and hopefully we'll see you in another session and
Thank
in
you.
February.
Thank you so
So,
much. Okay, thank you all. Please connect with me
Catherine.
on LinkedIn. Talk to you later.
Thank you,
Thank you so much,
everybody.
Catherine.
Okay,
Thank you
bye-bye.
for joining.